Now we all remember the game this past season when Alvin Kamara put up 6 touchdowns on the ground versus the Vikings. So you would think when I'm doing a video based on the most touchdowns each running back has scored on one team, then Kamara would be in Minnesota, but not so fast, buckaroo. Now I know a lot of you guys play MUT, and sometimes you don't feel like grinding to get the best teams. So if you want to just buy some training or coins or players, head on over to MUTReserve.com. Use my code CK. And not only will you be rich one day, but you'll also get 15% off your order. Brady looking a little happier than usual because now not only does he have Alvin Kamara on his team, because Kamara, you know, has scored 10 touchdowns versus the Bucs in his career, more than any other team. He also has Christian freaking McCaffrey. This man has scored 7 touchdowns versus the Bucs in his career, more than he has done versus any other team in the league. So now hopefully you guys get how this video is gonna go. Before we get into the rest of them, make sure you're subscribed. Road to 300K. I know we can do it before the end of the year. Also, don't forget to like the video. As for Nick Chubb, he's now on the Baltimore Ravens. He scored 5 on them in his career. The Bengals have Kareem Hunt as their starter now. He scored 7 touchdowns against them in his young career. The Jaguars have been tortured by a lot of running backs in the past few years, but now it all pays off because they have Derrick Henry as their new starter, and they might have the best backup running back in the league, and Joe freaking Mixon. He scored 5 on them in his career. Not only that, but the Jaguars might have the best 3rd running back in the NFL with Marlon Mack, who has 3 touchdowns against them in his career. The Jets now have Sony Michel as their #1 running back. He scored 6 touchdowns against them. The only running back on the Lions roster right now is Tariq Cohen. He scored 4 against them in his career. Dalvin Cook is the new starter in Green Bay. He has scored 8 touchdowns versus them in his career. Bro, 10 years ago, they'd be getting a 99. But instead, the Packers are getting a 78 overall Adrian Peterson. He has scored 17 touchdowns against them in his long career. Another Lions running back, KERRYON Johnson, has also scored the most touchdowns in his career versus the Packers. Ronald Jones has scored 3 touchdowns versus the Panthers, so he's in Carolina. Kenyon Drake is now in New England. Remember, he used to play on the Dolphins, and while he was there, he racked up 5 touchdowns versus the Patriots. Melvin Gordon has 9 touchdowns versus the Raiders, so he's in Las Vegas. The Chiefs only got to use Edwards-HELAIRE for 1 year because now he's in Las Vegas as well. It was a 3-way tie for Raheem with the Saints, the Seahawks, and the Rams. So guys that were in this situation, I waited to the end to see who didn't have running backs, and the Rams were the one. So now they have the fastest running back in the NFL. We didn't only do starters, we actually did a bunch of backups, and Carlos Hyde was one of them. He has 4 touchdowns in his career versus the Rams, and this man in his prime would have been a monster to add to your team. And he's still a monster, you know, Frank Gore, a future Hall of Famer. He has 16 touchdowns versus the Rams back when he was in San Fran. I'm guessing that's where he got most of them. Le'Veon's not the same player he was back in Pittsburgh when he was getting 10 touchdowns against the Baltimore Ravens. He's now in the purple, but he's not the starter. For some reason, Zeke just goes crazy against the football team. We also decided to move Darrell Henderson. He has scored 2 touchdowns versus the football team. So the Saints lose out on Alvin Kamara, obviously, but they actually upgrade in terms of speed. Tevin Coleman is now the new starter for the Saints. Malcolm Brown goes from the Rams to the Seahawks, a team which he scored 3 touchdowns against. And if you think about it, Todd Gurley did end up going from the Rams to the Seahawks. He took a different path, you know what I'm saying? Giovanni Bernard is a 3rd string running back in Pittsburgh now. He scored 7 touchdowns versus them in his career. Gus Edwards has scored 2 touchdowns versus Pittsburgh and Cleveland, and I guess Pittsburgh just needed more help. And thinking back, I don't know if that was actually the case, because now they have Booby! Speaking of solid running back ones, the Texans now have Jonathan Taylor. Now it's actually another 4-way tie between the Texans, Jaguars, Raiders, and the Steelers, but the Texans didn't have a starter, so yeah, I ended up putting him on here. From the Lions, we have DeAndre Swift switching teams to the Titans, a team which he scored 2 touchdowns against, but he's not starting. Nyheim Hines goes from the Colts to the Titans. Montgomery goes from the Bears to the Vikings, a team which he scored 3 touchdowns against in his career. The Bears are actually one of the few teams that don't get any running backs. Same with Buffalo. They too do not have a running back that was switched to their team, so their run defense has been nasty as well. Now as for the Broncos, Austin Eckler has scored 4 touchdowns against them in his young career, but he's going to be backing up Josh Jacobs because he scored 6 touchdowns versus them in his career. Dobbins is now in Cleveland. He scored scored 3 touchdowns against them. But Connor's the number 1. He scored 5 touchdowns versus the Browns in his career. Cam Akers has scored 1 touchdown versus the Buccaneers, the Niners, and the Cardinals. But the Cardinals didn't have a number 1, so we had to put him in Arizona. I feel like Damien Williams is a slept-on running back. I mean, he has 6 touchdowns in his career versus the Chargers. Still doesn't mean he's going to start, you know, because they have Philip Lindsay now, who scored 4 touchdowns versus the Chargers. Leave it to a GOAT like Duke Johnson to be one of the few running backs to go outside of his division. He has scored 3 touchdowns versus the Chiefs. And back when Latavius was on the Raiders, he was racking up touchdowns versus the Chiefs, 5 of them to be exact. Fournette's going back to the AFC. It was a 4-way tie with 3 touchdowns being scored on the Panthers, the Colts, the Steelers, and the Titans. And the Colts needed the most help. Antonio Gibson staying in his division, going to the Cowboys, who he scored 4 touchdowns against. But Aaron Jones is switching divisions. He scored 5 touchdowns versus the Cowboys in his young career. LaShawn McCoy is staying in Florida. He has scored 8 touchdowns versus the Dolphins. I'm guessing most of them came back when he was on the Bills. James White has scored 5 touchdowns versus the Dolphins. But James Robinson is going to be the starter for Miami. He scored 2 touchdowns versus them. Saquon is an Eagle now. He scored 4 touchdowns versus us. Embarrassed us along the way. It finally paid off. Even though Ingram's technically a free agent, I still wanted to use him in this experiment. And now he's on the Falcons, backing up Chris Carson, who has scored 3 touchdowns versus the Falcons, Panthers, and Vikings. David Johnson has scored 7 touchdowns versus the Niners. Matt Breida has scored 3 touchdowns versus the Giants, but he's going to be backing up Devin Singletary, who has scored 1 touchdown versus the Giants, Eagles football team, Raiders, Broncos, and Cowboys. You couldn't get one more versus one of those teams. So I'm pretty sure we just went through all of the rosters. We're going to find out just how much running backs matter, man. Some of these teams that don't have a great number 1, we'll see if they can overcome that. My early predictions are the Buccaneers going damn near undefeated, and the Bills missing the playoffs because they don't have a great number 1 running back. I don't know what else to tell you, man. I called it. You know, it's just what I do. I was wrong about the Bills, okay? They somehow overcame the lack of a great running back. You know, I've been saying it's the most replaceable position. You should never pay a running back, you know, the big money unless you got someone like a McCaffrey type. Titans struggled, you know, after they lost Derrick Henry. The Browns struggled after losing Kareem and Nick Chubb. The Bears made it with Cordarrelle leading the way at running back. Seahawks missed Chris Carson, man. Vikings missed Dalvin Cook. Look at the Panthers without McCaffrey, 3-13. Let's go through the stats. Tariq had a decent season. He wasn't a power back, so, you know, Bowden took a lot of his carries. Dalvin didn't get 1,000 yards. Jamal Williams had more than twice as many touchdowns. Mike Davis, no 1,000-yard season for Ronald Jones or Kenyon Drake. I'm looking for the first. There it is. Melvin Gordon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, man. That's a nasty duo. On the Rams, Mostert did pretty well. Chubb with 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns. That's one of the nastiest seasons I've seen from a running back in a simulation. Le'Veon didn't do too shabby on the ground either. They easily had the best rushing game. Zeke killed it though. 1,600 yards. That's the most we've seen so far. Tevin on the Saints did okay. Same with Gurley. Booby on the Steelers did pretty decent. Jonathan Taylor, only 2 touchdowns, but he had a lot of yardage. Naeem with 8 touchdowns. Yes, sir. Swift had 4. David Montgomery with a 1,000-yard season. Madison, though, 11 touchdowns. Cordarrelle with 7 touchdowns. Same with Artavis Pierce. This man is 64 overall. Maybe I should trade for low overalls in my CFMs, man. This is like what? Kareem with 8 touchdowns and 1,000 yards on the ground. Zach Moss, 10 touchdowns, not bad. Josh Jacobs, 6 touchdowns. Him and Eckler was a nasty duo. James Conner, very good season. Same with McCaffrey. We knew what he would do. But look at Kamara, 21 rushing touchdowns. That has to put him in the record books. Cam Akers with a nasty season. Same with Philip Lindsay. Damien Williams did his thing. Latavius, 1,000-yard season, 12 touchdowns. Leonard Fournette, not bad, but Jordan Wilkins took a lot of touchdowns away. A lot of carries for Aaron Jones. 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns. Look at Gibson, bro. The Cowboys, their run game was just disgusting, huh? Dolphins, same thing. Robinson killed it. James White, this has to be the best run game they've had in years. Same with the Eagles. Saquon, 1,400 yards, 9 touchdowns. He had a lot of fun running behind that offensive line. Same with Carson on the Falcons and Ingram. Both had 8+ touchdowns. Derrick didn't do so hot, to be honest with you. David Johnson and Juszczyk took a couple touchdowns. Singletary, you know, running behind not the best O-line in New York, didn't have the best season. And then Derrick Henry with 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns. Him and Mixon was another nasty duo. well. And finally, the Jets with Sony didn't do so hot on the ground. Do we have any running backs in the top 10 for MVP? The answer was no. However, OPOY, we had Chubb in the top 10. He also won best running back with Connor and Robinson right behind him. As for the NFC, we had Zeke in the top 10 along with Aaron Jones. And Zeke won best running back, Jones right behind him. Kamara ends up number 3. And then Alvin Kamara with 21 touchdowns on the ground is good for 5th all time. Just a filthy season. Let's see what the Chiefs got in store for us. Okay, they're going to begin passing. They're probably going to pass a lot. Maybe they should go to the running back more. Look at JPP. I can't believe it's the first time I'm mentioning that this is the actual Super Bowl matchup in real life that we just saw. And look at that dime. Not to mention this man has, I think, Omaha as his X factor. So he can see the defense's coverage and 3rd and goal. Yep, he knew exactly where to go with that one. I think the Bucks are going to win this pretty easily. Whoa, wait a minute. Wait a minute. The Bucks were up big heading into the 4th, but then the Chiefs just stormed back. I wish we got that Super Bowl in real life, man. Not saying the outcome. I'm just saying I wish it was a little closer. Anywho, hopefully y'all did enjoy this video. I've been grinding on a second channel, uploading like every other day, streaming almost every other day, man. The way you can know when I'm live is to be subscribed to the second channel, and I'll tell you right after I upload those videos. So yeah, that's something you should do. I'll probably leave it in the pinned comment, you know, for those of you guys that are not subscribed. And hopefully you have a good rest of your day.